Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here with us today. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you. Thank you for your time. I'm Tim Anderson, the Appraiser's Advocate, and we have a great guest today. We're grateful to Rick for various numbers of reasons, one of which is life kind of snuck up behind him and said, Rick, maybe you're not going to be here. But that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So we've got Rick Mayberry, Dr. Rick Mayberry, I might add. And as you can see, he's in his laboratory and he has been channeling Einstein and Newton and Leibniz and all those guys. And so, Rick, talk about what's behind you, talk about other stuff. More importantly, talk about your history and talk about what's in front of you.
Well, what's in front of me is still sort of a mystery. I haven't quite figured it out yet. Um, Tim alluded to the fact that I may not have been here. May um, May 1st of this year, a little over 6 months ago, I had a heart transplant, and I'm feeling much better now. I did all the work that they had asked me to beforehand. I lost 100 pounds. I did a lot of walking even in the hospital while I waited 72 days for a donor to become available. I'm a big person. I'm 6'4". I have a 58-inch chest, and getting a donor of comparable size, the further away you get from the average, the smaller that pool becomes. And um, after surgery, I've been through cardiac rehab. I walk every day, at least a couple miles a day, taking time for myself and my family, my wife. It's obviously been a life altering experience. I'm writing a book about it, and so that's pretty much that. Um, I've been a certified general appraiser since 1991. My father was in the business like so many of us. We got into it because of our families. I soon discovered, though, that uh, one of us was going to wind up dead, either my dad or myself, if I continued to work with them full time. So I actually went into the IT field for 20 plus years. I kept my general appraiser credentials, state educationally certified. My dad was a residential appraiser, and as interesting non-residential work came into the office, I would oftentimes take it independently. And, obviously I would help him when he got really busy. But so I've had sort of a dual career path, information technology and real estate appraising, and integrating them together. I was the very first customer in Pennsylvania to have an ISDN line. I've always been, I need more bandwidth. I need more bandwidth. I have helped several organizations. There's a former software company called Day One, which was a residential appraisal software form filling company out of Wayne, Pennsylvania. I lived a few miles away from them, and I did a lot of testing of their software. When they went out of business, I basically went to a la mode and WinTotal, did a lot of beta testing with them. I've helped um, with my data science background. I've helped a lot of um, people in the industry that are working on uh, adjustment, verification, validation tools, market change adjustment tools. I help with the math because it's my thing. And I do have a PhD. It's in electrical engineering, and it was a project based around a Tesla coil and superconducting, uh, creating super creating arcs over superconductors where you can insert bits into the valleys of the sideband radio frequencies, which of course has nothing to do with real estate appraising, but it was just something that I found interesting, and had some GI benefits left over to pay for it. And I also gave the university my intellectual property rights, and here I am.
You mentioned arcs over Tesla coil. I thought that was a heavy metal band back from Seattle back in the early 70s, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, Kurt Cobain used to play in it before Nirvana.
Okay. Um, those of you who get that, bless your hearts. Those of you who don't worry about it. All right. Let's talk a second about, okay, the issues with your heart just didn't jump up on you one day. They'd been ongoing for some time. So, but you knew eventually you would get to the point where either you would die or there would be a transplant. So, all right, you're facing a serious mortal situation, but yet you manage to keep your sense of humor. You manage to keep appraising. You manage to keep your family together. I mean, that given the pressures you were under, that's not those are not insignificant feats. Are you comfortable telling us about some of the challenges you faced and how you overcame those?
Well, sure. And I like sharing the story that one of while I was at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. It's one of the premier transplant facilities in the U.S., and I'm very grateful that um, I could make use of it. But one of people that I met, and you can become very close to people um, in a very short amount of time under conditions like this. And his name was William, and he was also from North Carolina, where I'm from. And we would walk together every day. My wife would make cookies, and I'd share them with him. And he was from New York and had a bagel connection, and he would share them with me. And he got his heart about a week after I got mine, and I never saw him again because he developed a fungal infection, could not fight it off, and he passed away. And I'm telling you this because my personality, and it carried over to my wife. We never even considered failing, you know. Um, Intellectually, I knew that there was a chance I could not make it, but it never entered my mind that I wouldn't. I had faith in the process. I had faith in the medical care providers, from the nurse practitioners to the physician's assistants to the doctors themselves. I felt I was in great hands and that I had nothing to worry about. And I'm not the person. I'm a glass half full guy. I'm not a glass half empty guy. And um, I think that when you have a positive outlook, and genuinely, I mean, because again, I don't consider failure. Um, I I have failed academically, in lab like environments, working on stuff. But is it really a failure when you learn and like, oh, I see this mistake here, and um, this is how I can get around it the next time that we try this. And it's a puzzle and it keeps me going. So in terms of, keeping my family together and my life together, and my sense of humor, um, it just never occurred to me that I shouldn't. I wasn't going to sit there and, woe is me, and life sucks, and why is this happening to me? It happened. I I apparently I had a heart attack at one point in my life. I didn't know it. I never got treated for it. I had some arterial blockages, and again, here's me. Um, I had an artery that was so blocked they couldn't do an angioplasty on it to open it, but I grew what they call a collateral artery. That's basically, I don't know, 20% of people have the ability to grow collateral arteries, which is like giving your body giving itself its own bypass. I mean, I'm lucky as hell. I always have been. And um it's I don't know what else to say other than um yeah, it, there's no point in worrying about stuff that you have absolutely no control over. And I didn't have control over, dying in the operating room or on the operating table. All I could do is do what the doctors and nurses and other providers told me to do, and I followed their directions to the T, um, and I had success.
Okay, well, let's talk about the success then. Now, a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about you're a math guy, you're an IT guy, and you're developing, either developing or have developed, and you mentioned some tools for doing adjustments. Now, as you're well aware, our friends at the GSEs are, and I'm trying to make this as positive as possible. Our friends at the GSEs are inviting us appraisers to become a whole lot better at doing adjustments. And specifically, they're jumping up and down about the time adjustment and the GLA adjustment. And I think you mentioned time adjustment specifically.
Mhm.
So, give us a synopsis of um, why you consider this enough of a problem that you had to tackle it in addition with everything else you got going on. And give us a synopsis of how it is that you solved the issue, and then how applicable is your solution to other appraisers such that when it comes time to make a cogent, credible time adjustment, they can.
Well, it's a good question. My as I told you earlier, my dad was a residential appraiser. Now, he didn't do a whole lot of mortgage work. The lion's share of what work he did was corporate relocation work. And under corporate relocation, they wanted to know what they're going to be able to sell the property for within 90 to 120 days in the future. So back in the Microsoft DOS days, there was a program called Lotus 123, it was sort of the precursor to Microsoft Excel. And part of this the statistical education is understanding the concept of forecasting. And Lotus 123 had a forecasting function built into it. And you could take data and enter it, and you could then basically graph market change from the past, and then using polynomials to, like a third order polynomial, you could actually forecast into the future a bit to give you an idea, is my market still going to be going up, or is it still going to be going down, or does it look like it might hold fast for 90 to 120 days. And, markets are always dynamic. It's, I think it's very rare, especially in the residential world, that we see imbalanced markets. Demand always changes, supply always changes. Yeah, I would say that, if you got, you're never going to see a month, a quarter where the number of sales versus the number of new properties coming on are equal. It Real life doesn't happen that way. So basically, I solved my issues 20 years ago using Lotus 1, 2, 3 and forecasting. And now with North Carolina professional appraisers, MNAA, I've been doing some courses and teaching people um, how to take a data set, put it into Excel, and how to graph down to. And the full disclosure, I'm a big fan of George Dell and what he refers to as his market price index. And I'm also a big believer in um, market segmentation, um, and getting all the data that you can possibly ever need. And you can down to pennies develop what market change in dollars per day actually is. And it's it's inarguable, um, because when you have all the data, we've had this conversation in the past, the difference between inferential statistics and descriptive statistics. Descriptive tech statistics is when you have the entire data set. So what is the entire data set? In my area where I live and where I practice, within a half a mile, I can show you homes that are 1,200 square feet with 2 bedrooms and a bath that are 225,000 upwards to $3 million, 7,000 square foot homes on Lake Hickory. Just because they're geographically similar, it doesn't mean that they're in the same market segment or the same sector or the same class of real estate. So when you're able to go back 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and look at things that are constructed similarly in terms of, the year that it was built, the GLA, the similarity in materials that it's built from, you can definitely segment a market. And using descriptive tech statistics, you have all the data. You're not using inferential statistics, which inferential means to imply that this is a sample of a greater, larger set. You have all the information. So when I say that you can get down to, $21.80 a day market change adjustment, it's legit because I've got all the data. That's all that there is. And it's not a sample, so there's no error or no sample bias because I've got all the data. And if you think about, I'm on several social media platforms and appraisal groups, and I see, how do I what's the best way to know that my adjustment for market change is good? And I see people talking about R values. If you legitimately segment your market, you've got all the data, so an R value doesn't really matter. And what an R value measures is how good that statistical sample is. And again, it would be meaningless if you actually segmented the market. So that's the kind of stuff that I do.
So, talking about descriptive statistics versus inferential statistics. Now, you and I have mentioned this before. In fact, we were talking about it just before we hit the record button. Um, Appraisers. Oh, and you mentioned George Dell, and yes, his stuff is wonderful. It's something I've taken his classes and highly recommend it. Let's talk about education. All right. When you, you can see Rick laughing. He knows where this question is going. All right. You wake up one morning and you don't want to be driving a truck for Dunkin' Donuts anymore. So you decide you're going to go to appraisal school. Okay, good for you. So you go to appraisal school and you're sitting there in class and open the book and you start doing what you have to do. And then I don't know, you're in North Carolina. I don't know how many hours you have to have in North Carolina. I'm just going to assume 100. So 100 hours later, and you look at the book and you look at your notes and you raise your hand and say, "Hey, teach, we didn't cover statistics." And the teacher goes, "You're right. We didn't, nor are we ever going to." So, descriptive statistics is a lot easier than inferential statistics. We're still not trained in it. So, is our training remiss? Is our training short-sighted? Is our training designed to throw us under the bus? Or is our training what we have to do to fill out forms with the thought being, okay, if you want to advance, then somewhere, somehow you're going to take a stats class all by yourself. What's going on?
Well, that's a big question, and I might get off on a tangent here. If I do, just reel me back in. But there's the general appraisal world, and there's the residential appraisal world. And in the residential appraisal world, in some states you license and you're permitted to do certain residential work up into certified residential, which enlarges the scope of what you can do. Um, and the problem is, we say this all the time, that our results under USPAP are to be credible. What's going on with the GSEs right now with respect to supporting adjustments of GLA, of condition, of rooms, what have you, market change. The GSEs don't care about credible. The GSEs care about accuracy because it's risk management. And what type of risk? Financial risk. Okay. And I mean, we're talking billions of dollars that has to be protected, right? And as appraisers, it's up to us to protect in the residential side of things to protect the consumers and the client. Well, our client, and ultimately the buyer. And unless we start teaching or increasing the requirements for our certified residential people and having the apprenticeship or mentorship of being a trainee under your certified supervisory appraiser, until we stop teaching this is how you fill out the form to get it through, collect your fee, and off you go to your next assignment, we're not teaching people how to be accurate. We're not giving them the toolbox of what you really need to be accurate. And, that comes down again to a debate between USPAP being credible and what the need of our clients really is, which is accurate, being accurate. And until until we sort of like I again I started as a general. I was never a residential appraiser. I went to a community college back in the Society of Real Estate Appraiser days. Um, well before there was the Appraisal Institute as we know it now. Um, and I had really great teachers, and we did cover a lot of this stuff. Okay, so in the general appraising crowd, especially with some of the income capitalization techniques, yeah, you have to understand and be able to read algebraic formulas. You do have to have a sense of um, being able to create a standard deviation when doing certain analysis of income streams and rentals and so on and so forth. You have to be able to do that. And what's wrong with upping the level of education required for the residential appraiser that would provide them with these very needed tools? Because again, on some of the social media platforms, I see many people, and it makes me kind of sad that well, I'm getting out of the business after 20 years. I just can't do this. It's too much. That AI is taking over the world. It balderdash. There's there's been something over the last 30 years that's coming around the corner that's going to put residential appraisers out of business. We all know that people have been thinking that way for decades. Well, it still hasn't happened. Um, so I think that if we would all agree that credible isn't good enough, it's having to be accurate and being able to provide the client what they need and what they are paying you to do with respect to using Excel and creating charts to graphically represent the analysis behind things such as market change, such as GLA, um, and some of the other wonderful adjustment tools that are out there from Mike Gandy, Brandon Reich, Scott Cullen. There's some really good stuff out there for those purposes, and but you need to be able to understand how they work because I forget which advisory opinion it is, but um, basically, if you're using computers to assist you with things, you don't have to be able to explain the computer code, but you need to be able to testify in, say, court that this is a function of that, and this is how it works, and this is the expected outcome based on the rules behind this type of math. You need to be able to explain that. Um, and I just think that we're not giving the residential appraisers what they need in terms of education and the toolkit and um, you know and if anybody watches this and wants some help with it, get in touch. I'll mentor you. I'll tutor you. It's and I don't want your money. I just want to help and give back, um, because you're going to need it. And quite honestly, it's going to make you a better appraiser.
Okay, Rick, in a minute, I'll ask you to give your email address and I'll put it up on the screen, but I have to do that in post-production. Okay, as we wrap this thing up, let me ask you a question. Okay, you just offered your mentoring services. Okay, somebody calls you up and says, Rick, I'm tired of driving the Dunkin' Donuts truck and I want to get into real estate appraisal. And, before I make this leap, I need to know what to expect. So you ask a few questions, and one of the questions you ask of this particular potential candidate is okay, what kind of Excel skills are you going to bring to your first supervisor? Now, again, you're looking at somebody who may uh, they may have a GED, and I'm not dumping on GEDs. That's not the point. What I'm saying is, um, your this particular mentee is saying, you know, I want to help myself. I want to get better. I'm willing to make the sacrifices I've got to make. But obviously, I've got to appeal to a supervisor so I can become an appraiser. And you've mentioned Excel. We've talked about Excel off the air many times. So, what level of Excel skills does an appraiser who is looking for a first time supervisor or even another supervisor because they don't like the one they got? What level of Excel skills does that appraiser have to bring to the table?
Well, that's a really good question, but the question is it's relative. What I consider advanced, what I consider intermediate, what I consider beginner are probably different than what you think they are. What I would say is instead of a level, what should I learn in Excel? Well, aside from like, the basics, how to open it, how to save a file, how to create a new file, um, how to import data from CSV files, very important. Because I don't know an MLS system out there, or
Explain what a CSV file is.
it's a comma separated value file. And what that means to say is, like I was alluding to, I don't know a multiple listing service platform out there, or a tax assessment platform that's available to the public over the internet that you can't download the data once you find it. Sometimes it's free, sometimes you have to pay, but you're downloading data. And the way that it comes in a universally readable format is a comma separated value file. So first row has the headers like street name, street number, city, state, zip code, sales price, so on and so forth. And as you go down these columns, the street name, comma, street number, comma, sales price, comma, cities, comma, state, comma. That's how Excel can figure out that these are my column values and my row values, and um, this is how I can insert it into my Excel sheet. So once you can get the data, then you can start to analyze and manipulate. And when I say manipulate, manipulation of data to me is data cleaning. Okay. If if there is an error in the data, like somebody didn't put in a price change, or um, fat fingered the sales price, instead of being 100,000, they put it in as 1,000,000, or maybe 10,000 instead of 100,000. You need to be able to remove that row of data, or pick up the phone and call the agent, and say, was this really 10,000 or did you mean 100? And then ask them to update the record in the MLS so other people don't have to fix it. But that's data manipulation. And then you can start your analysis, by sorting things by date, by price range. Start using some of the forecasting functions that are built into Excel. And I would definitely get a there's several out there. Real estate math, real estate statistics. You can get them, those types of books at Amazon. I don't even know if Barnes and Noble's still a thing, but I used to buy a lot from BN. If you want to get yourself an education on how to do this, you can do it. And I'll also tell you this: YouTube is a fantastic place to get free Excel training. Just go into YouTube, statistics for Excel, and search on that, and real estate math in Excel. You'll be able to sit down, and the thing I like about YouTube for adults who've been out of school for a while is you can pause and rewind, pause, rewind, pause, rewind until like, oh, I see. And you can pull it up on your computer and really be able to follow the examples at your pace and teach yourself. And um, I know a lot of people that have done that way.
I think most of us have, quite frankly, because you're right, it is a great source. Okay, Rick, again, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Rick at ncappraisalgroup.com. NCAPPRAISAL group.com.
Okay, and we'll have that, that'll be right above your head so everybody can see it. All right, Rick, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your attitude. I want to thank you for your willingness to help other people. And the fact that while you were going through all the stuff that you went through, you chose not to focus on Rick, but you chose to focus on getting better so you could continue to help people. That's an absolutely amazing attitude. Thank you very kindly.
Well, thank you for Tim for having me, and I enjoyed this. Thanks.
Sure. And this won't be the last time, believe me. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Again, we've got Rick's email up here. You want to get in touch with him, and you can get in touch with me at Tim at theappraisersadvocate.com. You see it right there uh, over my shoulder. And we look forward to the next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye now.